I'm outside of San Diego, California with the all-new 2021 Toyota Mirai hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, and behind the camera is a hydrogen fuel cell filling station. But I want to give you guys a walk around of Toyota's most gorgeous vehicle. This thing is in the supersonic red color. It's really, really pretty, as well as the blue color. But I got my hands on this XLE, which this is the bargain Mirai. This comes in at around $50,000, which is, you know, about what the Lexus GS used to cost. Now this XLE has 19-inch wheels. I believe the Limited has a little bit prettier 20-inch wheels, but that vehicle is going to cost about 15 grand more for the higher spec Limited trim over this XLE, which to me is not going to be worth it. Just walking around this gorgeous piece, we kind of have a split headlight system going on, which is more in line with what would be on a Genesis vehicle than a Toyota, but it looks super good from every single angle, this Mirai. And it is based off of the TNGA-L platform. You could call it the N platform that the Crown is on in Japan that we don't see here in the United States. It's a rear-wheel drive based platform, and some will say that this is the Lexus GS that we never got. It doesn't quite have the quality of driving experience, as you'll find out in a little bit, as a Lexus, but the powertrain is very Lexus-like with how smooth the fully electric driven wheels are. And I think one of the best looking aspects of the Mirai, other than just the gorgeous long hooded front end, is the kind of short and stubby fastback design. Of course that helps with aerodynamics, but it is a very sporty looking vehicle. Even though it doesn't drive very sporty, it's going to get your attention because there's nothing else out there, especially in the Toyota end, that looks this good. You would have to buy a Lexus to find a vehicle that looks as menacing and as elegant at the same time as the Mirai. And even then, I don't know if the Lexus ES looks as good as this. Now, trunk space is a little bit limited, as you guys can see. You're not going to be able to fold down these rear seats or anything like that. And the reason is this has 3 large carbon fiber reinforced hydrogen fuel tanks in this vehicle underneath the rear here, as well as underneath the central tunnel of the Mirai. The average person would probably think that there is a gasoline engine under here, but that is not the case. You see all these high voltage cables coming out of here. I'll put a diagram up of how it works.
Future Kurt coming to you. I wanted to share a little bit more about the Mirai's fuel cell system. It works very similarly to how Toyota's hybrid systems work. It's more of a parallel hybrid. The fuel cell stack can produce electricity straight to the electric motor, but if you need a little bit more juice, the drive battery produces some power as well. And of course, if your battery's too low, maybe you're not braking enough, the fuel cell stack can provide energy also to be stored in the drive battery. So essentially just take the gasoline engine out of any other Toyota hybrid, replace it with hydrogen and a fuel cell stack, and it works exactly the same. It's quite genius of them and makes for driving the Mirai like driving any other Toyota hybrid, except you don't have any gasoline internal combustion engine vibrations. Anyways, let's get back to the video.
Now there are 3 massive tanks in this vehicle, which is going to give you about 5 kilograms of hydrogen storage. On a full tank of hydrogen on this vehicle, you're going to be able to get over 400 miles of range. And in fact, Toyota world record breakers just got the Mirai to over 800 miles of range of hypermiling this vehicle, which is absolutely incredible. In my short time driving it, I've got about 75 miles per gallon so far. Now getting on the inside of the Mirai, let's hear this door thud, which is pretty solid even though the window is down. So very happy with that. We do have a glossy black plastic here on the door switches, which is no one's favorite material, that's for sure. We have glossy black here, and there's that H2O button. That's where you can release the water that is produced. The only emission of this vehicle is water. Now, 12-inch screen in here. It is the older software system, but it got me to the True Zero hydrogen fuel station where you can see that blue Mirai over there. We have a Nexo now in line waiting to fill up. behind the line of Mirais. Maybe the Toyota people will let them go out ahead because we're not priority compared to actual customers. Anyways, climate control is right here. In this limited, well, in this XLE, we just have heated seats. In the limited, you'll have ventilated seat button over here. Now, we don't have volume or tuning knobs. Instead, you have these physical buttons, which are not ideal, but they're better than not having physical buttons, and they're not touch capacitive, they're real buttons. So I do like that, even though they're not knobs. Now, this might look familiar to some of you guys. This is very similar to how you shift gears like in a Prius, for example, or other Toyota hybrids. So to put park on, you just press that button. We have snow mode in here, as well as different driving modes, which I haven't played a whole lot with. Of course, you have Eco, Normal, and Sport, like a typical Toyota vehicle. And there's the train of Mirais getting out of the way so that Nexo can get its fair share of hydrogen. This particular vehicle has about 5,889 miles on it. And it, of course, still drives and feels like a brand new vehicle. So we do have a 360 camera on this, which I wasn't expecting for the XLE. Steering wheel is very, very high quality, very Lexus-like, pretty impressive overall. We have a nice stitching on that door panel I didn't see earlier. And the seats here are pretty minimal. We don't have too much fancy stitching, a little bit on the headrest, a little bit here on the edge. We have this checker pattern here that looks like it's kind of taken from the LC500 sort of pattern, which is not bad, but it's definitely not the same quality of leather and material as a Lexus. Now, getting in the back here, it is a bit tight. So it's not like a Lexus ES, for example, even though it drives and it rides very similar to a Lexus ES. We have this huge hump in the middle, which is where one of the hydrogen tanks sits. And we also have charging ports, as well as a couple vents, more glossy black plastic back here. But the seat is set up for me at 6'1", and yeah, my knees are already pushing into it. Luckily, it's a soft material. Now on the roof, we have a ripple pattern that is similar to water. We also see it on the engine cover on the hydrogen fuel cell stack underneath the hood. So I like that little touch here that only the rear passengers are going to really be able to appreciate. Folding down the armrest here, it's very thick, very substantial. A little button here to reveal some small cup holders. You're not going to be able to fit any big gulps in there or anything like that, but we'll fold that back away, and I'm ready to get out of this kind of cramped back seat here in the Mirai. Oh yeah, and we also have a Jbl Sound System, even in this XLE model. Now this bad boy has 220 or so pound-feet of torque and 180 some horsepower, and we're just going to roll onto the throttle going uphill here. And 0 to 60 is not quick on this, about 9 seconds from what I'm hearing. And I'm not going to test that for you guys, but just keep in mind that you have that power instantly, so it doesn't feel like you're ever lacking too much in power. If I floor it, the response is instant and it goes pretty well. So I feel like, yes, maybe because of the looks of the car, it looks very high performance and very sexy. It doesn't necessarily have that same sort of oomph to match it, but it has the classiness of the silent drivetrain in this Mirai, as you would expect just looking at it. What's also interesting is that Toyota will give you $15,000 worth of free hydrogen fuel for the purchase of this vehicle. So if you think about it, you're getting like a $35,000 vehicle if you end up using all that fuel that Toyota's paying for. Now the steering wheel is really high quality. It feels like a Lexus steering wheel. The door panels are very, very nice, and even the trim, it feels like maybe slightly more upscale even than the Venza. And the Venza is almost knocking on the doors of a Lexus in terms of interior materials and qualities. So this rear wheel drive vehicle feels very, very premium, and as it should for $50,000 and over $65,000 for the Limited, it still feels like a very, very solid vehicle. And like, to be honest, there's no way I'm spending an extra $15,000 more on the Limited to get maybe some, added features like a heated steering wheel, ventilated seats, things like that. Not worth it in my opinion. So we're gonna pass this little Nissan Versa here, and just instant torque, instant power. And I like the sound of it. You're not gonna be able to pick up the sound over the microphone. I'm sorry, it's a very quiet vehicle. Obviously, it's fully electric driven, but you have a very interesting noise that comes from the traditional engine bay compartment that sounds like a little bit of an extra whirl. An electric whirl, not like a vacuum. It sounds a little bit different. I wish I could convey it to you guys, but it has an interesting sound when you get really hard into the gas pedal. So I found something about the Mirai that I actually don't like, is that it has an artificial sound that is always on the vehicle under about 22, 23 miles per hour. And it's that same sound that Toyota uses, or similar sound anyways, in their hybrid vehicles when you're like in reverse or kind of just idling along. But this Mirai has it all the way up to around 22, 23 miles per hour, and you hear it inside of the vehicle. So it makes for what would be a pretty darn quiet electric vehicle. It makes for it to be a bit loud and annoying in a sense, because you have that whine, and I need to merge and use that instant power and torque. So that was nice. But yeah, it's a bit annoying under 23 miles per hour because you can hear that whine. Now, if you have the radio on, you're never going to notice it, but I like to drive it in silence a lot, and I'm hearing it as I come to a stop, which, by the way, the brakes are they're good. They're a little bit soft. There's a good progression, but they stomp the vehicle well. You can't really get a sense of any sort of regen going on when you are just coasting. The regen only seems to come from when you get in on the brake pedal. Man, hundreds of surfers. I guess that's one reason to live in California. You have nice waves. In South Florida, no waves on the West Coast. Now I'm coasting at around 36 miles per hour. The roads are pretty clean here. Super quiet, as you would expect. I mean, there's no vibrations going on from the engine, then there's no engine noise at all. Now that I'm above 23 miles per hour, I don't get that annoying whine that's going on. So it's very smooth going in this Mirai, as you would expect. We're gonna get onto the freeway here, and we're gonna push this Mirai a little bit around the turns. We have a nice decline on the turn here to help us bank around the corner, but feels very solid, very planted, super smooth. And there's a red light that I don't understand how it works. So California, red lights on the merging for the interstate. I don't know what that means other than to stop. But I'm going downhill here pretty much instantly up to speed. So those 182 horsepower doesn't sound like much, but like I said earlier, it's instant powered, super smooth, and you get up to speed quickly. And now that I'm going about 67 miles per hour here as we make our way to the fuel cell station, I hear a little bit of noise maybe on the outside of cars passing. Not a lot of wind noise, not a whole lot of road noise. Doesn't feel quite as quiet as a lot of Lexus vehicles, but really, really close. And in terms of the smoothness, there's no vibrations coming from the engine, so it feels really, really solid out here. And going uphill, I'm just going to hammer it down. There's that initial surge of torque, and then it starts accelerating. It's not going to wow you by any means. It's still just 182 horsepower or so, but getting that nice boost of torque instantly does feel pretty good, and it's a welcome change compared to most of their hybrids. They don't have that sort of response, or of course their gasoline engines don't either. But since I have 3/4 of a tank of hydrogen, I'm not going to wait in line. I was first to get in line there, and it didn't fill up properly, and then other cars started coming in, so I got out of line anyways. It looked like a very simple, straightforward process. Once you get the hang of it, it's just a little bit more tedious than filling up a gasoline engine, or should I say a gasoline vehicle, but it should provide the same sort of convenience once they are more readily available. I'm going to accelerate really aggressively up this steep hill, pedal to the metal. I guess I left it in sport mode, so we're getting the full fat 182 horsepower here as we come up onto this Corolla. Can't keep up the Mirai, that Corolla. So the Mirai is one of Toyota's best vehicles, if not their best vehicle. It's just hamstrung by the availability of hydrogen, and as we get into the future, 10, 15 years, as hydrogen becomes more readily available in more states and in more places around the world, vehicles like the Mirai will thrive and do well. In the meantime, They're really niche vehicles, and that's why I had to bring it to you guys, because there's no way I'm going to be able to review one of these things in Florida in the foreseeable future. And it's been an absolute pleasure, as it is, one, such a fun looking vehicle, gorgeous, elegant, sporty, all of the above. It ticks all the boxes. The interior is a minimal and high class experience, especially for the price point. Maybe not the limited price point, as that it encroaches on $70,000, but for this XLE, it's very, very nicely appointed. But it is more of a glimpse into the future for Toyota, as they bring us a four-pronged approach into a carbon neutral future with hybrids, plug-in hybrids, fuel cell electric vehicles, and battery electric vehicles like the BZ4X. If you haven't seen my coverage on that, make sure to check that out as well. So who is the Mirai for? Well, I mean, if you live close to a hydrogen fuel station or several of them, looking at the Mirai as an alternative to something like a Tesla or a plug-in hybrid or the RAV4 Prime is really a no-brainer, in my opinion. You get crazy efficiency in here. Toyota's going to give you $15,000 of fuel. You get electric car performance to an extent, not quite like a Tesla, but you get the essence of an electric motor at all points, which means instant torque and quiet and smooth criminal operation. But sadly, most of you guys will never see a Mirai in person, because it's not going to be sold in most states or in parts of the world. And even worse yet, you guys won't get a chance to drive the Mirai, which is one of Toyota's, if not Toyota's, best vehicle. But even though there's really no availability of hydrogen in most parts of the world, I'm still glad Toyota's made this vehicle, as it gives us really a ton of excitement as we go into the future of a carbon neutral future. And I hope to see more fuel cell stations be built, especially where I live, because I would like to have a fuel cell vehicle. I mean, think of the amount of fuel cells you could put in a minivan. That would be pretty cool. Anyways, guys, I'll see you down below on what you think of the Toyota Mirai. It's undoubtedly one of Toyota's best vehicles, but it's going to be a unicorn, hard to find, hard to fuel, and hard to obtain and live with. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next video. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button. More content coming out of Evolution 2.0 2021 here for Toyota outside of San Diego, California. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.